Good afternoon. So if you don't understand me, it could be one out of two reasons. Either that my body has been telling me for 2 hours I should be in bed, or that English is not even my second language. So what I want to talk to you about today is something that some of you might be familiar with, others not so much, and it's called the global travel retail world. And this is a picture from Changi Airport we heard very briefly about from MasterCard today. And the travel retail world, in essence, is the business of selling retail to travelers, as the word kind of tells you. But very quickly about AOE, I started the company almost 20 years ago now in '99. I was 14 years old, and I was kind of bored in school. So I started doing web development and then went very quickly into e-commerce. And we, over the years, we grew into one of the largest e-commerce implementation companies in Europe. And in the last few years, 3 to 4 years, we found a very interesting niche, and that is that so-called travel retail market. What our goal is right now is that we want to transform this market, and we can already call ourselves the world's leading travel retail digitalization company, and we've been working with pretty much some of the most exciting both airports and airlines in the world to help them transform that market. But maybe let's take a quick step back and have a quick look at what travel retail actually means and what the definition is. So what is travel retail? If you're looking at the official definition, it says, duty-free and travel retail is a global industry selling goods to international travelers. Sales in duty-free shops are exempt from the payment of certain local or national taxes and excise duties, normally with the requirement that the goods are only sold to travelers who will take them out of the country. The industry is currently valued at a very small $67 billion US. So it's about 3 times what Alibaba does in one day. So it's not that big a business, actually. Nevertheless, this business has, for the past 50 years, ever since it got established in Dublin for the first time, been banking almost 100% on impulse purchasing. People are at an airport, they are flying with an airline, they are bored, they have time to kill, they look around, they go into a store, they see some products, and they buy them. That is what the premise has been for ever since travel retail started. However, I think it's time to look at a reality check and think about, is this really still the reality of consumer behavior? And there's some very interesting research that probably none of you has seen so far. We've heard this statistic just before me. I got really annoyed when I heard him say that, so I'm going to skip that one. We are aware that we have more mobile devices nowadays than toothbrushes. The average American spends more than 4 hours daily on their smartphone, and now 25% of all e-commerce sales in the US are made on mobile devices. We also heard earlier this morning from our friends at Alibaba that in China now this is more than 75%. On their Singles Day it was even 90%. So the amount of shopping that actually happens on mobile devices is significant. No one is doubting that. So the question that the global travel retail industry is asking themselves is if this is today's no shopper, how are airports and airlines going to survive in the future? And this is actually not an overstatement, because if you're looking at, for example, the airports in Europe, 60% of them are loss-making airports. And out of the 40% that are not loss-making, their EBITDA comes 50% on average from retail, and the rest from parking pretty much. So now that parking is being disrupted more and more by Uber, by autonomous vehicles, by ride-sharings of all sorts, what are we going to do if the same happens to retail at airports? And we can already see the first disruption of this market happening on a pretty substantial level. So if you're looking at this global market, and the estimate, as I said, for 2017 is $67 billion, over the last 2 years, this market has actually been shrinking across the board in most continents. The only exception has been Asia. But if you're looking at the details of these statistics, The 10.4% growth in Asia that you see here actually comes mainly from off-airport duty-free stores. 17.7%, you can see at the bottom, has been the growth in off-airport duty-free stores, and the growth in airports has actually been only 1.5%. So all of the rest of the decline that you're seeing, if you're adding these numbers together, is actually coming mainly from airlines that are seeing massive drops in spend of duty-free buying on the plane. And of course, also other duty-free operations that are out there, like ferries and so on, that have also seen some drops. But of course, most significantly, these drops have been across Europe and across the US, with more than 7% drop over 2 years' time. Now, the interesting thing, though, is that this has been at a time of massive growth of passenger numbers. So if you're thinking about that every year we are seeing growth between 4 and 6% in passenger numbers across the entire globe, these numbers actually look even worse. So if you're looking at it from a spend per passenger basis, what used to be about almost $20 that an average passenger spent in retail flying out of an airport or transiting through an airport or whatever, we are now at only $16.4, and it continues to go down, although the passenger numbers are continuously rising. If you're looking at those same passengers, let's pick one passenger out of those 4 billion passengers that traveled last year. They actually spent $540 online and more than $6,000 in retail. So it's a really, really small portion that they're spending in travel retail. But you would ask yourself, why? Because the travel business is one of the most data-rich environments in the world. We don't all have the lucky circumstance of owning YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Amazon, and everything else across the globe. So we can just simply combine all this data and sell to the customers exactly what they want when they want it. But the airlines, together with the airports, are actually in a position where they can learn a lot about their passengers. They're just not capitalizing on it yet because they don't actually know how to properly. When you're looking at, and this is some of the statistics that I promised you, when you're looking at how are decisions being made when shopping at an airport, there has been actually a trend reversal of almost 360 degrees. It used to be common knowledge in the travel retail industry that about 60% of all these purchases are made on impulse, like I showed at the beginning. However, now more than 65% of these purchases have been pre-planned. So 35%, as you can see, before leaving to an airport, 10% while they're on a holiday destination or on the way to the airport, or before they're going airside at the airport, and so on. And a very small portion of the sale decision-making actually happens in the store. If you're looking at this on a global scale, the statistics are even more shocking. Today, 71% of all purchases in travel retail are planned in advance. And you can see which countries are driving that trend. It is primarily the Asian countries. And if you think about a typical Asian traveler that might be doing their trip of Europe for the first time in their lives, visiting 10 different countries, they know that they will not meet people that can speak their language in every one of those countries. So they are pretty much forced to do their research in advance. So they like to do their pre-shopping in advance, reserve their products already, pay for them ideally, and then just pick them up to take the stress level out of shopping in their destinations. And you can see the more senior travelers that have been traveling the world for a much longer period of time still has a higher percentage of impulse than those from Asia. Now, this is a statistic that came out this year and that even blew me away. And it was done by Gartner, and it shows that now today in the world, 79% of every purchasing decision has some involvement of online search. Yeah, so this is in very strong contrast to some of the numbers we saw today, that only 10% of all the purchases are actually e-commerce purchases. That may be so, but 79% of all purchases are actually related to an online search, to being exposed to these products through social media, etc., etc. And when you're talking about the millennials, I hate that word, but the millennials have been asked in this study, what is their ideal situation? What would encourage them to shop more in travel retail? And the clear answer was from 73% of them that omni-channel e-commerce is the ideal hybrid, where they want online shopping, reservation, the full product spectrum, but then the ability to still pick it up in the store, return it in the store, have it available in their hands before they fly out of the country, for example. And this is what most of you know is called the web rooming effect. Now, how did we start in this business? It was very much by accident. Frankfurt Airport, which is the second biggest hub in Europe, came to us and said, we are realizing that these statistics are not looking very good for us, that spend per passenger is dropping across the board. What can we do about it? And we want to digitalize the entire journey for our passengers and make everything that the retailers at our airport, that the F&B providers at our airport, food and beverage providers, and parking and everything else that an airport can sell, we want to make it all available through a digital marketplace. So let me show you what that looks like.
This is the Frankfurt Airport. Every day, 160,000 passengers hurry to catch their flight. Like Michael. An hour ago, he realized he'd forgotten to buy his wife an anniversary gift. Normally, this would be problematic, but this airport is not a normal airport. Here's what he did. On the cab over, he pulled out his phone and brought up the Fraport app, ordered some fancy stuff. His order was sent to Heinemann's in Terminal 1, where it was quickly put together. Now, he's headed to his gate, and so is his order. It's hot on Michael's heels, arriving right when he's about to board. Pretty cool, huh? But this is just one story in the tale of how AOE built one of the most comprehensive omni-channel experiences in the world. This is Kai Schmidt-Huber, head of digital at the Frankfurt Airport.
Unsere Geschäftspartner zahlen keine fixe Miete, sie zahlen an uns einen umsatzabhängigen Beitrag.
So when the retailers make money, the airport makes money. Oh, did we mention this is also the largest shopping mall in Germany?
Und über den Weg sind wir zum Thema E-Commerce gelangt.
They needed to find an expert they could partner with. This is Kian, founder and CEO of AOE.
As a passenger, you're typically only exposed to a limited amount of stores on your way to your plane. With our own 3 suite, you are now able to order from stores that might be in a different gate or in a different terminal altogether, and you can actually earn and burn loyalty points on virtually everything.
So how does this whole omni-channel thing work? Say you're stuck in a boring business meeting, like this guy. Why not do a little shopping before you catch your flight back to Oslo? The biggest challenge for e-commerce and fulfillment at airports is that there is only a very short window of opportunity, and AOE's OM3 platform is currently the only solution that can react to flight delays and gate changes in real time. Take this passenger. As she arrives at security, she gets a notification that her flight has been delayed. Luckily, she can use her Frankfurt Loyalty reward points to treat herself to a free dinner while she waits. I hear the schnitzel is nice.
Unser Hauptziel ist es, die gesamte Customer Journey von der Anreise über die Anwesenheit hier am Flughafen bis zur Abreise digital zu begleiten.
Like, say you're walking past the caviar house and decide to pop in for a little wine tasting before your flight. Full-bodied. Pull out your phone and order a couple of bottles to be sent home.
Another example would be, I come home from holiday, I don't have any groceries.
While on your flight, order some eggs and bacon. Heck, throw in some cookies. You deserve it. Once you've gone through baggage, they're ready for you to take home.
What's really special about the solution is that it's one of the first true multi-retailer, multi-channel, multi-everything sort of solution that you can use across a variety of platforms.
Like, say, a shopping mall. In other words, what AOE started in Frankfurt will soon change the way we all shop and travel in the future.
So as you can maybe imagine, when we published this the first time, we got a lot of calls from a lot of airports around the world that wanted to do similar things. Just a few weeks ago, we launched at Heathrow, so we now are live on the 2 biggest airports in Europe. And we're, as I showed on the first slide, we're currently working with about 22 different airports to do similar experiences. But of course, you're probably wondering, what are actually the results that we're seeing from something like that. And as you heard in the video, as part of doing this whole digital transformation of the airport, we also launched a loyalty program, because in the end, that is one of the main possibilities to really create a consistent relationship with the passenger and communicate them throughout their future journeys as well. As you might know, in Europe, there's a very, very strict new data regulation, GDPR. Unfortunately, the Germans are to blame for it, so I'm sorry for that. We came up with it originally. But it basically means that you can't easily share data with other companies, and what Alibaba is doing would be completely illegal anywhere in Europe. Whenever it's two different companies, you can't just exchange data with each other. So what the airport actually did was they created a joint venture together with their main retailer, their main concessionaire, which is Heinemann. And through the loyalty program and giving explicit consent when you're signing up for that loyalty program, that made them able to actually communicate to the passengers throughout the relationship of their journey through the airport as a continuous passenger. The results we've seen are that the average spend of a passenger at Frankfurt Airport is only 4 euros roughly, which is really sad. It's a tiny amount. It's basically less than a Starbucks coffee. And But members of the loyalty program are now spending 90 euros additionally to that average spend per passenger. We have a repurchase rate of 30% within the loyalty program of passengers purchasing on a continuous basis. The average basket value increase we've seen so far is 230% versus what the average basket value is in retail. At Heathrow, we're only live for 1 month now. We have already seen a quadrupling of the basket value in relation to retail, because one of the main reasons is that Heathrow has decided to put their focus primarily on luxury goods. So it's actually one of the few stores in the world where you can buy 40,000 euro or pound watches, where you can buy Louis Vuitton handbags, etc., etc. So very few stores, of course, have the permission to even do that around the world. And one of the things that I find also very interesting is the 35% average cross and upsell potential, whereas the other slide that you saw about retail at airports, the upsell potential is only between 3 and 7% in retail once people buy from one category to then also buy in a different category. And what this web rooming effect has translated into at Frankfurt Airport is that for every 100,000 unique visitors that come to the e-commerce platform, some of them purchase, some of them don't, we also see an increase in retail spend of between 500,000 and 750,000 euros per these 100,000 visitors. And as you can imagine, an airport gets free traffic quite a bit. So an airport website like Heathrow.com, for example, will get 50 million unique visitors per year for free. So it's really just a question of converting them into e-commerce customers, whereas other e-commerce players have to spend billions on marketing and advertising to get people on their platforms. Now my clicker has stopped working too. I think the laptop is frozen. Okay, no, something's not working with the clicker. Oh, now it's working again. Okay, thanks. So really what we're trying to achieve is for these airports to create, on the one hand, a consistent passenger experience, and on the other hand, increase the non-aviation revenues that they can provide, that they can generate throughout the journey, so that they actually become self-sufficient entities. And for those of you that know a little bit about airports in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East work completely differently from airports in the US. In the US, airports are considered train stations with airplanes in them. They are funded by the government or by the local government of that city. The CEO of the airport is virtually the mayor, so it's a very political game. And any profits that an airport makes in the US, actually it gives back to a large portion to the airlines to decrease their landing fees. So airports in the US don't have any really substantial interest in growing revenues, whereas all the airports in the rest of the world are all privatized, and they have, most of them are public and they private, and they have to generate revenues and increase shareholder value, obviously. So, just a couple of thoughts. Because probably many of you will ask, why would you do e-commerce at an airport? The rents are horrendous. You only have a limited possibility for fulfillment. Why would you do it at an airport rather than just doing it from the warehouse? Of course, one of the main reasons why you do it at the airport is because you can do it duty-free and tax-free, which is something you can only do at an airport or at an airline. But there are actually 3 substantial reasons that we have found that support the thesis. Number 1 is we are currently the only company in the world that can do 30-minute deliveries of more than 100,000 products to a passenger. This is something that, of course, is very compelling when you're looking at the last-minute possibilities that entails. A lot of us are very impatient, and same-day delivery is not enough anymore, and 4-hour delivery is not enough anymore, so we always want it immediately or not at all. The other aspect, of course, is the 2 highest costs of doing e-commerce or pure e-commerce play that you can see in any financial statement of Amazon or other companies, the 2 most expensive ones are returns and shipping costs, and the second one is cost of traffic acquisition or marketing, so to say. Both of these are extremely low for an airport because they don't have any costs of returns. People still have to go to the airport to pick it up there. Of course, there is possibility to do a home delivery technically, but then it's no longer duty-free. So the returns that we're seeing are in the very low single-digit numbers, whereas someone like Amazon has more than 30% return rates. In the fashion industry, it's sometimes 60% return rates. And of course, as I mentioned before, the cost of traffic is very low when you are in an airport because people are logging onto your Wi-Fi, that's free traffic. People are going to your website to check the flight information, that's free traffic. People are using your app, that's free traffic. So, as I mentioned before, we are starting to roll this out at more and more airports around the world, and the changes in shopping behavior that we're seeing there are quite interesting. Now, as you are all retailers, you might know that the best-selling item in travel retail in the world is Chanel No. 5. Now, I would like to ask you what you think is the best-selling item in digital travel retail. And I give you a hint, it's not Chanel No. 5. In fact, none of the typical duty-free products are very high selling in digital travel retail, and I think the reason for that is quite easy. The reason is that people are not concerned that these products will not be available when they get to the airport. Yeah, because these commodity goods that the airports always have plenty of stock available because they can't afford to run out of stock is not something that you desperately want to reserve and prepay before you're traveling. So what we're seeing is that we are actually going way up the ladder in terms of what the best sold products are. For example, in Frankfurt, the best sold product in February this year, 2 months ago, was an 8,000 euro Leica camera. We sold 5 of them within 1 month. In Singapore, where we are working with Singapore Airlines, we are actually selling more wine fridges on the planes than wine. Yeah, so it's a very strange situation. You're sitting on a plane, you're bored, you're looking at a catalog, and you see a wine fridge, and you're like, wow, I want to have this wine fridge now. You don't have to fulfill it on the plane, but you've created that meaningful relationship with the customer in that period of being susceptible. Heathrow, the top-selling item is actually a 35,000-pound Jaeger LeCoultre watch. Because you cannot buy it in a lot of places, and it's not that easy to make sure, you cannot be sure that they always have it in stock in every terminal. And of course, the primary buyers are Russians, Vietnamese, and Chinese, and they want to make sure when they come to that airport that they have that damn watch in stock and are not disappointed. And one thing that we're doing in Auckland, New Zealand, which is very, very exciting, is something that we're calling the collection point. And it's actually a partnership that the airport has done with more than 300 retailers downtown. And what that entails is that you can go to any of these retailers in downtown Auckland, New Zealand, buy the product there, whether it's a watch or whether it's jewelry or a handbag. You only pay the tax-free price. The airport then collects it from that retailer with a courier, delivers it to the airport, gets it through customs, through security check, to the collection points, and the passenger then picks it up as they leave the country. The airport takes an 8% commission on that. The retailer can give a discount because they're selling tax-free to that passenger. And that entire scheme for a very small airport in Auckland with only 18 million passengers is driving more than 100 million in sales already in the first year. So those are other opportunities where it really just takes out-of-the-box thinking how you can really take omni-channel to the next level. The biggest item we sold through this scheme in New Zealand was actually a $1.2 million watch. You can guess the manufacturer from the picture, I hope. It was a Richard Mille. So I don't think it's a big surprise that most brands don't want to be sold like this anymore. Many brands have actually pulled out of travel retail on planes for that very reason. They don't consider it premium enough. They don't like this aspect of being sold like junk or leftover product and so on. However, they are again opening to the possibility of selling to travelers digitally. And for those of you who don't know, the reason why travel retail works the way it does is because the actual brands give substantially higher margins to travel retailers in the range of up to 30% more base points in margin in order so that they only sell to travelers which they consider premium customers. Now, when you're doing e-commerce, of course, you need to prove to these brands that those are actual flyers, which makes the purchasing process a bit more complicated because we need proof of flight and so on. But on the other hand, it makes it possible to bring brands on board again that have stopped actually wanting to sell through an airline or that don't want to have very expensive concessions at an airport anymore. So we very strongly believe that, and I'm sure you all do as well, that digital won't replace physical travel retail, and digital will never replace physical retail either. But we believe that that's where most of the growth potential lies, and that's where most of the personalization and recommendation possibilities digitally happen. And so this is, in our opinion, a very, very exciting area. And when you're looking at everything aside, all of the increases in revenue and all of the potential that drives, the main value for an airport to do something like that is that they actually transform these anonymous people walking through their airport that they don't have any clue about who they are, where they're from, what they're doing, what they're earning. They are actually turning them into quite interesting profiles that can help them personalize the experience to them, sell more custom products, do better brand relationships, have more meaningful food and beverage and shopping offers at the airport, and so on. And this, in the long run, is a much higher value for the airports even than the pure sales they can generate. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's not easy. That's why these rollouts are quite substantial. We actually integrate with every single retailer at the airport into either their ERP system or their POS system, so we have live inventory on every single retailer. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Olivia over here. Do you see this technology rolling out in like super centers, like or malls or anything like that?
Yeah, we are talking to Westfield and all of these big shopping mall operators. In general, yes, absolutely, because it's actually what the consumers want. For me, the most frustrating experience ever is to drive to a mall, find parking, go to a store, and not find the product I want, and I've wasted 2 hours for nothing. And I think a lot of you can feel with that. it's not actually so difficult to integrate with all of the retailers at a mall and basically offer the same service with collection points, with pickup, with home delivery, with fulfillment, etc. The biggest problem that we are currently still experiencing is when talking to these mall operators is that they look at their business model in a completely different way from airports. Airports have always done concession models. They have revenue-based rent. So they are interested in driving revenue at that store because they basically get between 28 and 50% of the product value in concession fee. And a mall is typically structured as a real estate company. They simply rent out space, and if the retailer is not happy, then they move out and someone else moves in. They don't have that kind of relationship of being a service provider to these retailers, and so it's much harder to figure out how are we going to fund something like that? Who is going to pay for it? Because in the end, the retailers benefit, but the mall provider would have to pay for it, and then they would have to figure out a transaction fee or something like that. So that's something that we are still seeing that they're struggling with, but we think it's inevitable in the end because otherwise, especially the malls that are not in downtown London or in downtown New York are going to have a very hard time to continue to attract people to drive there specifically with that uncertainty of not knowing what they're going to find.
Hello. Yeah, right here. So GDPR goes into effect like May 28th. And you guys already have a workaround. Can you go a little bit further into your plan to like share data for the loyalty program across the different brands?
Well, the data from the loyalty program is not directly shared with the brands, at least not on a personalized level. It's only shared on a anonymized level. Where it gets very interesting is most people are not aware that actually the most value of the data sits with the airlines, not with the airport. So the real value is when the airport and the airline work together, and this is what you saw in the video with Lufthansa and Frankfurt Airport, where when you are able to actually know that the passengers coming to the airport before they're coming, then you have much better opportunity to do something like that. However, this currently in Europe is now only possible if you're doing a joint venture. Unfortunately, that's the case. In other countries, it's not like that yet. But this is, for example, why in Singapore, where we're currently rolling out, Singapore Airlines also did a joint venture with the retail concessionaire that is actually doing the in-flight retail to be able to fully utilize that data. Yeah.
Relative to the issues with delivery to gate, is it a group of independent delivery people that work with all the retailers, or does each retailer have their own group? And then what about the timing issues from terminal to terminal? It would seem like that would be very hard to coordinate.
Yeah, the hard to coordinate part is fully software driven, so we know exactly how many minutes it will take for this product to go from that terminal and that store to that terminal to that collection point. That's what the complication in the software is. Who does the actual delivery is completely up to the airport. So some of the airports have their own service organizations that do it. Others, like in Heathrow, they have a company that they have outsourced all of the in-terminal service operations to, and then others are just hiring students to do it, etc. There are many different approaches also, of course, because this gate delivery looks sexy, but it's not very practical all the time. So what is actually used more by the passengers is typically lounge delivery, for example, or collection point delivery, etc. Because what do you do, for example, when you go to the gate and that person has just gone to the restroom and then you don't find them, and etc. There are a lot of hurdles with gate delivery, so it's not the primary value proposition.
To contact them.
Sorry, say it again?
What are your most effective ways to contact the customer?
So the most effective way is when you're working directly with the airline. So for example, what Singapore Airlines has actually just announced last week is that we are now doing a partnership with Ctrip. So Ctrip is one of the biggest booking portals, like there's Fliggy and Ctrip in China. So now when you're going on Ctrip and you're booking a flight through Singapore with Singapore Airlines, in your booking flow you actually get product recommendations for pre-order directly onto the plane. That is pretty much the perfect time for doing that pre-order. The second possibility then is doing it during the check-in reminder. You can now check in for your flight and select your seat. Oh, by the way, you still have time to pre-order these products to be delivered to your seat. With Singapore Airlines, we can do that up to 90 minutes before the plane takes off, which logistically is quite challenging because the product has to be packed onto the cart that gets brought onto the plane 1 hour before the plane takes off, so we only have 30 minutes to get it onto the cart. But that is, when you're talking already to the passenger in their travel flow, that's of course the best. As an airport, that's harder to do, so for the airport, they really need to establish this as a brand. In Heathrow, it's called the Heathrow Boutique, and it's already quite well known in the frequent traveler world in Europe, but the airports don't have it as easy as the airlines.
And are you talking to them on mobile?
Sorry, say it
Are
again?
you talking on mobile?
Yeah, of course, through the mobile app of the airline or the mobile app of the airport. Of course, the shopping experience is also either a progressive web app or it's a responsive website. So it's, in the end, the point is that you're doing it as an omni-channel solution, so you don't really care which channel the people use to make that pre-order or make that reservation or that purchase, but you accept it from all sides. So one thing, for example, that Heathrow has just launched is an Alexa skill. So you can now say to Alexa, Alexa, when is my flight leaving from Heathrow? And Alexa will know what you mean and will answer you. And so it's a very easy add-on to that to say, Alexa, please reserve a bottle of Jack Daniels and deliver it to my lounge. And all she has to ask back is, what's your flight number? So these are possibilities that once you have it on an omni-channel API basis, you can pretty much integrate with any third-party traffic acquirer. Any other questions? Thank you very much.